Okay, so I think we shall go ahead and make a start. And if people can see me getting distracted, it's because I am letting people into the meeting. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us for the next in our series of Speak Out Talks. I'm very excited to say this talk's been sponsored by remarkable women, and we have a very remarkable woman on the call, not myself, but Danielle. So just a quick welcome from me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Marie Hemingway. I'm one of the founders and directors of Speak Out Revolution. Just to give you a little bit of background about the Speak Out Talks, we're keen to provide a platform to people to empower them to speak out on topics that deserve attention, particularly when it comes to our workplaces, enabling us to challenge the status quo so that everybody can advocate for organizational change, which is really the core of what we're trying to do at Speak Out Revolution that I'll talk to in a second. So on our agenda today, I will be doing our welcome. I'll spend a couple of minutes just while we wait for people to join the call to give you an introduction to Speak Out Revolution if you haven't heard us before. And then I'm really excited to be handing over for the main event to Danielle, who's going to be talking to us about disrupting HR. There'll be time for Q&A, so please drop your comments and questions into the chat, and I'll be monitoring those, and we'll bring you onto the call to discuss those with Danielle toward the end. And there will be a hard close at 1, so everybody can get back to their days. I know everyone's working really hard. So just to let you know, we are recording this event, so please don't write any comments or say any things that you wouldn't want anybody else to hear after the fact. And that goes for you as well, Danielle. I know we were talking about that before.
Thanks for the reminder.
No worries. Brilliant. So just while we wait for people to join, a little bit of background about Speak Out Revolution. So Speak Out Revolution are a not-for-profit founded in 2020 with a mission that we are working very hard at to cancel the culture of silence on workplace harassment and bullying. So we recognize that there are challenges that exist in society. I think we're all aware of them, and these naturally show up in our workplaces, that there are various barriers to discussing what they are openly and solving those problems so we can create truly inclusive work environments. So what we're doing at Speak Out Revolution, we host a global anonymous survey called the Speak Out Survey, which enables anyone in the world who's experienced workplace harassment to document their experience and their route to resolution within their workplace. We then collate those experiences and provide that collective intelligence and insight openly within the Speak Out dashboard, which is an interactive dashboard freely available on our website so that anybody can look at those insights for their sector and soon to be company so that they can target their interventions in the right places. So in a nutshell, we like to describe it as we provide this safe platform for people who experience non-inclusive behaviors in the workplace, because that's what harassment and bullying is, to enable them to speak out safely so that everybody else can drive change for more inclusive working. So that's Speak Out in a nutshell. Just to talk a little bit more about our dashboard, which is literally like my second child. So available on our website, speakoutrevolution.co.uk/dashboard on desktop or optimized for desktop. We have a visual of the dashboard on the left. And just to give you an insight into what you can see there, if it's of interest to you or your organization. So the dashboard shows data-driven insights on people's lived experiences of unfair treatment in the workplace and their route to resolution for targets of these behaviors. The types of people that might use the dashboard or find it insightful are HR professionals, DE&I professionals, or advocates for inclusion within specific sectors or companies. And how might you use it? So you would just go to the dashboard, have a look at the insights and information contained within it for your specific sector or geography or company when we introduce that information, so that you can effectively tailor training, D&I programs, and internal processes to serve the people that we want to retain within our organizations to retain that diversity of thought. And I'll finish with, if you're interested in how we can support your organization when it comes to this space, please drop us an email at team@speakoutrevolution.co.uk. So I think that is enough chat from me. Please do take a look at our work at Speak Out Revolution. I'm very excited to hand over to Danielle. Danielle's been, I will say, a big advocate for our work, Danielle, whether you admit it or not, and has provided lots of helpful conversations to me as we've been developing what we'll be doing at Speak Out Revolution. So I'm excited to retain your expertise and support, and have convinced you to deliver this talk. So enough from me. Over to you, Danielle. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Do you want to flick off your screen presentation? So I've got a bit about me first, right? I'll tell you about me, it's all fine. But okay, well, hello everybody, and let me encourage you to use the chat functionality as we go along if you would like to. I'm really used to that. All of our work's always been online, so it's not a new thing to me to be talking to people via an online platform. So here's a funny story. About 2 years ago, and these are my sophisticated PowerPoints. That says next in line for confession, because I think it's the wrong way around. I haven't mirrored my screen. About 2 years ago, I was invited to do a 5-minute talk with slides that changed every 10 seconds on disrupting HR. And I think that's how you found out about me, actually, Marie. I think you watched the talk, right? And so it's not a lot of time to talk about something that you feel really passionately about. And my desire was in that talk to simply wake people up to a few different ideas and some context around some different worldviews around the world they might be living in. And there were all HR professionals in the room, and it was really a bit of fun around shaking up their thinking. And it didn't make me famous. I didn't expect it to, but it certainly started a conversation. And Marie's not the only person in the last 2 years who's wanted to talk to me specifically about that talk. And it's very different to everything else we do at Remarkable Women. I did it at a request, and it was a kind of fun thing to do. And I opened that talk with a confession. And my confession was that, which Speak Out Revolution have done a great job of branding, was that I was a reformed former HR director. And that what I said to the room was, the bad news for you as HR professionals is that means I'm going to be a bit like an ex-smoker. I'm going to be evangelizing on all the things that you probably don't want to hear because you're still in that world. But actually today I have another confession, and it's a more important one. And actually Marie inadvertently alluded to it as she was introducing me. We spoke, I don't know, about 18 months ago for the first time, and I was all for supporting Marie and Speak Out Revolution in the work that they're doing. But if I'm being wholly honest, I was also a little bit, it's not my mission, it's her mission. This isn't a thing that I give a lot of my attention to. Really happy to be there if you need me, but I'm not going to dive in head first. And life had other plans for me, let's describe it as that. So as a consequence of the work that Speak Out Revolution have done, and these are things Marie wouldn't know, it's been really fascinating how many clients have come to me to tell stories of harassment or bullying in the workplace, how much my own story has started to come to the forefront, and really actually how much attention I've started to give to a part of my career and my profession that I probably didn't give that much attention to before. So I'm here with a confession that says I was a hell yeah when Marie said, would I come and do this talk again? Although good news, bad news, it's not the same talk. That was 5 minutes. This is half an hour, and I'm going to talk about some different things because I've moved on since then. But yeah, life has wanted me to play in this space more and more. And even last week with the stories about Brewdog and some other big stories that are arising, I'm starting to see my own part in cultural problems as a former HR director and as a former leader of 10,000 people. And whilst I don't have any great shame about how I conducted my career, I have a different insight now looking from the outside in. And I want to share some of that with you today. So my mission in the world, which is different to Speak Out Revolutions, is that I want to create 50,000 heart-centered leaders, changing organizations from the inside. And so this is a great place to start, actually, in this place where we're struggling to speak out, where things are happening that we know are not okay. And the more leaders we can create who are able to do something different in this space, the better it is for all of us. But here's the good news. I'm not about to diss HR. I have great respect for the profession, and a lot of time for people who work in it. And I see things differently now than I did then. And I'm going to be talking to my own experience, the things that I saw that I did. And now I'm starting to see from the outside looking in that other people are doing too. And I would also say, super easy to find out who I've worked for in the past if you go and look for me at LinkedIn. And there's no point pretending. I spent 12 years working for Sky TV in the UK, latterly as their customer service director. And the stories I tell today, I'm going to invite you to not spend too much time wondering which company I'm talking about or which companies I'm talking about. I will say I had a great time at Sky, and I'm quite sure in any organization of that size, there are lots of people who would tell different stories to mine. And I think that's one of the things that happens in larger organizations anyway. We've got pockets of different things going on and different things occurring, which often makes it hard actually for HR as a profession to be objective about anything, I think. So today I'm going to talk to you about three things. The first is the identity crisis that I think HR is facing. I did talk about that in my shorter speech. The second I did not talk about, which is living and working in the vortex, and I'll talk about what that means a little bit later on. And the last thing is the war of process. So what's going on in our world where we are relying on process? We're using the law as a very low bar of a moral backdrop, in my opinion. And what would happen if we started to see things differently? And why am I excited about HR in particular? I'll say why, because I think almost everybody joins HR because they care about people. They want to help people. And so it's surprising to me, even looking back, to see how many ways I eroded and compromised my own values in ways I might not have even noticed at the time. And so my call out today to anybody who's listening that might be interested is to start to see all the things that are made up, and I'll talk about that when we get into the vortex, in our organizations and in the world that we live in, and to start to see the opportunity we have to create something different. So that my great friend Shelley, here we call it the revolution, my great friend Shelley calls it the revolution. So let's call forth the rebels who are willing to create and do something different with a really, really complex problem. So I want to say organizations are just showing up a spotlight on certain aspects of human behavior that have been going on since the dawn of time. We haven't cracked it yet, and there's lots to do in this space. And there are enough smart people in the world, I believe, to really make a difference. So let's go here first with the identity crisis that I believe human resources is facing. These are ID tags. I'm just going to hold them up for you. It's a split identity, in my opinion, even with the title. So human and resources are not two words that go very well together, if you think about it. So human is all about what is it that makes us unique individuals, gives us a heart that beats, all the things that when we talk about humanity, we're talking about seeing people for who they really are, all of that kind of stuff. And then we lump the word resources next to it, which basically means something we use to get things done. Right? And so you put those two words together and you can already see they're in conflict with each other. If we really want to talk about humanity and we really want to live as true human beings in the work, then describing us as resources is problematic before we've even started. And in my experience, particularly in HR, where we're building policies that are for everybody and we start to treat people like homogenous masses, we end up in trouble because human beings are not all the same. And we don't all behave in the same way. And when we start to, for example, create rules that are meant to catch out the 5% who will misbehave, but we catch 100% of the people in those rules, we just create a mess and a problem everywhere. And so our obsession with process is good in many ways, particularly if you're in the manufacturing world or you want to get things logistically out. And with humans, we don't conform to process very well. And every time we try to create these catch-all policies that are meant for everybody, in my opinion, we end up serving nobody. And so I would love if human resources would frankly have a good old think about changing their name. That would be a great start for me. I would love it if we could stop. I mean, I come from a call center world using phrases like volume recruitment. We could stop using phrases like FTE, full-time equivalent, all these things. Yeah, people and culture, lovely. All these things that dehumanize the human experience, give us permission when we work in the profession to forget sometimes that we're dealing with real human beings. And I didn't think I did that, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit more so you can start to understand kind of my lived experience of it. So let's move to the vortex, right? We have a phrase in Remarkable Women. I couldn't draw a vortex, so I've drawn this instead because this goes with the phrase that we always use, that we think we see the world the way it is, but we actually see the world the way our mind tells us it is. So let me say that again. We think we see the world the way it is, but we actually see the world the way our mind tells us it is. And what I mean by that, and it's so important in organizations and when we think we are doing the right thing, to realize we're all seeing the world through a different pair of glasses. My world is shaped by my life experiences, the culture I've been brought up in, the way my family have behaved, the way my friends have behaved, the way the media talks to me, the organizations I work in have all influenced the way I think. And the brain is a reductionist tool, right? So its job is to take in all the information that life is offering to us and break it down to things that we can actually work with. And so our brains are doing an awful lot of work with us to join dots, to give us what look to be logical and rational solutions. And so what happens when we're in organizations, and I've been coaching a lot of women for a lot of years now, so this is not unique to me, I see it everywhere, is we forget we're living in a system and that system is training us to behave in a certain way. And so if you're in HR, we often forget that the system of human resources requires us first and foremost to protect the company. It requires us first and foremost to protect the company. And it's so embedded in our behaviors and the way that everybody is acting and doing things that we forget it. We forget that our mind is biased before we enter these scenarios where somebody comes in and claims harassment or bullying or inappropriate behavior, whatever that might look like. And I would have sworn as an HR professional that I was a champion of the people. I would have sworn it to anybody who asked me. And I certainly think that most people would have agreed with that about me in terms of how I stood against others in my profession. And let me still say this. I used to run a big shared service team. And Marie, I saw your data a couple of weeks ago and I squirmed and I knew it to be true. I used to produce reports every week on how many grievances did we have, how many capability issues did we have, how many disciplinaries, all of those sorts of things. I did it for several companies over the course of my career. I never, ever reported on how many grievances were upheld. And you know, my truth is, I think I didn't report on it because it didn't even cross my mind that it was an important piece of data. And if we had reported on it, I know we'd have been looking at less than 5%. I know we would have been, because in the vortex that I was in the worldview that I was operating in, something in me was trained to believe managers first, to assume that people who put in complaints had sour grapes about something, and to plan out the easiest and the cheapest way to fix the problem, which really meant, let's remove this person from the organization before they do any more damage. And it's not easy for me to say that, and I'm saying it on a recording, because it's really important that as HR professionals, we start to realize that on some level, we are doing these things. That when somebody comes and complains about a manager or a culture, we're looking for reasons why that is not true, not for the reasons why it might be. And why is that so shocking to me? Well, I have to tell you, I've worked for an organization that for a very short period of time that absolutely broke me. And when I get out into the world of, and how would it feel to talk about that, I go, how's it going to affect my reputation? Who will believe me? Who will believe me? And I look at the Brewdog story that came out last week, and I looked at the responses to James Watt's post on LinkedIn, which was so interesting to me, because I realized my worldview now is tainted to some extent by the fact that I've lived on the other side too. I've lived on the side of an organization where working practices were horrendous and all the rest of it. And yet I know that companies can fudge the Times Top 100 because I've seen it done. It means nothing, right? I know that good PR people can put a spin on anything. And I know that it is really, really, really difficult to have your voice heard. And yet, I think most of us can attest to the fact that there are toxic pockets in almost every organization we have ever worked in. And so as HR professionals, it is really important to see where we are stuck in the vortex. We're seeing things differently. I'm looking to hear John, I want to hear more about what you're saying there too. So let me say this. This is a picture of the Turd. We have a hotel in Edinburgh now that is designed to look like this for some reason. It's a 5-star hotel and everyone's calling it the Edinburgh Turd. We need a bullshit radar in HR. And let me say, the biggest bullshit radar I think we've got is the phrase, it's the right thing for the business. Because the right thing for the business tends to mean that we are hiding behind a really cruel or ruthless decision in service of the right thing for the business. And I go back to my MBA, which I am old now, 15 years ago, where I remember being taught businesses exist to create profit for shareholders, which is the most insane definition of why a business could exist that I can think of. And Simon Sinek, and who I'm going to talk about in a minute, talks about this really well in The Infinite Game. He says, why would you put the strategy of your business in the hands of short-term renters? Right? So investors, in essence, are putting money in to get it out as soon as possible, to make as much money as possible. We do not want them at the driving wheel of our organizations, right? And so when we move to a place of it's the right thing for the business, what we usually mean is, how can we make more money for shareholders? And how can we justify the action we're about to take? And so I would argue the right thing for the business gives us permission to hide behind process, to hide behind law, to hide behind numbers, and to be sloppy in our leadership, particularly when it comes to constant restructuring and when it comes to handling real human instances and problems. And so I love the quote from Desmond Tutu, who talks about we need to stop pulling people out of the river and instead working out why they keep falling in. And so I want to give you a couple of examples today of why I think people keep falling in and why I'd love HR to be on the alert for it. So I've got 2 terms for you. One is called ethical fading, and the second is called willful blindness. Ethical fading and willful blindness. And I want to say I personally have done both of these things in my career on more than one occasion, and I'd be surprised if most people haven't. So ethical fading, you can find out about this in The Infinite Game with Simon Sinek, is described as when employees act in unethical ways to advance their own interests, often at the expense of others, believing they have not compromised their moral principles. So I'm going to say that again. When employees act in unethical ways to advance their own interests, often at the expense of others, believing they have not compromised moral principles. I can't tell you the amount of times I would sit in a meeting and we'd be planning out something we were about to do. And I would say, does this align to my values? And my first answer would be no. And then I might spend weeks and weeks trying to align it. Not necessarily by majorly changing the action we were about to take, but by starting to shave away at the things I thought were okay and the things that weren't. And we've got to watch for ethical fading in organizations because it's happening everywhere and all of the time. And I do believe HR have a responsibility to show up when ethical fading is occurring. And it's not easy. It is not easy at all. And so I want to combine that with a concept called willful blindness, which is a legal term, but you can find out about it if you read Margaret Heffernan's book on willful blindness, which is a legal term. So what it means is that as a leader of an organization, you can be found liable for turning a blind eye to things deliberately. Right? So you can literally be found to have chosen to not look in a certain direction because you didn't want to see what was there, and therefore you couldn't be blamed for it if it occurred later. And I do think when it comes to bullying and harassment in particular, no one's surprised about the things that we see and what shows up, because most of us in some form or other have been applying willful blindness all over the place. We've been hoping that the problem will go away. We've been feeling like we're not the one empowered to do something about it. In fact, we've been feeling powerless in many ways, and we've been blaming it on senior leadership. And when enough of us turn our eyes away, the problem is allowed to grow. And it's allowed to become even more extreme than it did before. And so I would love for all HR professionals to have their heads around what it means to watch out for ethical fading, and what it means to see willful blindness in action in organizations, and to see when we do it ourselves. To see when we do it ourselves. And so let me take that to the obvious place where Speak Out Revolution play, I think, which is what I would describe as the war of process, right? So this world where someone comes to us with a problem and we say, do you know what you need to do? You need to take out a grievance. And I want to say this: we are failing every single person out there that we invite to take out a grievance. Every single one of them. The chances of what they are speaking being heard are slim to none. And I know Marie's data will back that. It's a terrifying process. You are almost certainly putting your career on the line to do it. And it will have repercussions that spin off all over the place, unless I don't even know who the jewels are out there who do this well. Because in my mind, the process itself is flawed. And let me talk about why. When we invite somebody to take out a grievance, we are already announcing to them, we can't handle hard things around here. Let the law take over. Let the process take over. We don't have a better way than follow the instructions. And what happens when we go into a formal hearing is really simple. We're at war, even if we don't mean to be. And the reason we're at war is everybody's got a loaded gun under the table. So if I'm an HR professional and my job is to protect the organization, I am watching constantly for the little trip ups, the things I need to have in my back pocket in case this goes horribly wrong. And if I'm showing up with a grievance, I know that. So I am looking for all the things you are doing wrong so that I can hold them against you if I need to. And what we end up with is a process where it is almost impossible to talk about the real issue on the table, because we're all so busy worrying about what the outcome might be and how we might defend ourselves if it all goes wrong. And so, and I don't know if you have this data, Marie, what we really see is a predictable, perfect system of processes. Raise a grievance, have the grievance heard and not upheld, raise an appeal, go off on long-term sick, right? Go off on long-term sick because you cannot handle what is occurring. And so the process itself is broken. And if we ever find ourselves uttering the words, you need to raise a grievance, we need to think again. And I love what Jordan's saying there. I used to be a union representative and I advise people to avoid it at all costs. We need to advise people to think again and to find another way to have their voice heard, because in that room with the guns under the table, we have no chance of reaching, or very little chance of reaching, a position where we really get to address what is unfolding in front of us. And I also want to say this. There's an amazing quote from Maya Angelou. She says this: when someone shows you who they are, or someone tells you who they are, believe them. And I do think an awful lot of us hang around in organizations who have shown us who they are time and time and time again. And I do not believe it is the coward's way out to simply put your hand up and say, this is not for me, I am going. I actually believe that is the courageous response, because when organizations keep showing us when this happens, we do this, then we need to take action and protect ourselves from the inevitable outcome. And that's sticky, right? Because of course the big question is, we play with, oh my God, everything's broken. Now the hell, what do we do? Right? What do we do? And I remember Marie coming to me and asking me to fill in an anonymous survey, and I didn't even want to do that. I didn't even want to do that. That's how edgy I felt about my reputation in the market and my own experience. And I don't have all of the answers. I do have some. For the last, I don't know, 5 years, and I think they require courage, and they require strengthening our leadership muscles and taking them far beyond what we might learn in organizations. Because in order for us to get to the heart of what matters, we have to learn how to call on people's humanity. We have to lay down our weapons, and we have to get below the surface of what's going on. And as HR professionals, we have to be willing to have off-the-record conversations, to break the rules in order to really understand what is happening behind the scenes. We have to realize we come with tinted glasses and be open to taking them off for a while. We have to realize that going in with a preconceived outcome, which I have done more times than I can tell you, like this person needs to leave, and so my action is engineered to move them in that direction, is making sure that we miss the point. And for most of us, it is having us operate in organizations where there is ethical fading, where there is willful blindness, and we don't like it. And so part of our work is to learn the skills and the muscles that says, I'm going to sit here and I'm going to listen for longer. And I have one story where I did do the right thing. I have more than one, but I have one that's really powerful. Many, many years ago, we had a report that somebody in our organization had reported inappropriate sexual harassment from a medical professional. And in the role I was in at the time, I was called into a room with the leading medical professional in the organization and a bunch of HR people to discuss whether we were going to take this complaint further. And the conversation at the time, no surprise, and I understand it, was, but you don't understand, Danielle, if this person is making this up, she is going to ruin this person's career. And I said, and what if she's not? What if she's not making it up? And the conversation went to all kinds of places, frightening places, like that effectively she was a frontline worker and who could trust her to tell the truth over this other person. Yeah, I mean, it was horrifying because the person who was defending the rights of their whole profession was terrified at what could occur if this went horribly wrong. And I was pretty young in my career, and I said, I just want to be really clear, because I got a very clear instruction. I was to do nothing. I was to close the inquiry down. And I said, I want to be really clear. You can fire me for this. I will not be closing this inquiry down. I won't be doing it. And of course, what unfolded, which was so shocking, was that this person had been removed from at least 3 organizations already. And everybody had done it behind the scenes with a signed piece of paper that protected references, that protected behavior. And so for those of us who really care, it's incumbent on us to find a way to open up the human conversation, to call on, to lose the managers in the room and to call on the human being that says, I'm sitting in front of you, bearing all my vulnerability. Why would I lie? So that we can be in a different conversation, one that doesn't have a preconceived outcome at all, one that recognizes the mess, the challenge of fixing what we don't want to see. And so I don't have the answers. It's complex. We have a crappy history of fixing it so far. A great friend of mine says, everything is broken. What a great time to be alive. And I like to honor that message for those of us who like to be part of the change. But I also think I think it's really easy for us to turn our eyes to others. Management aren't behaving, top leaders aren't behaving, blah, blah, blah. And we're not going to change anybody else overnight. Like it or not, the change starts here with me, starts here with you. And so I want to leave you with a really simple sentence. It comes from a teacher called Byron Katie, and somebody said to her, "What is your definition of a life well lived?" And she said this: to be present to the right thing to do in any given moment and to do it without hesitation. To be present to the right thing to do in any given moment and to do it without hesitation. And so my call out really to all of us on the call today and to any HR professional who watches this afterwards is get present. Get present to what is occurring in the room, in your organization, and lean into the others, especially in organizations like this, who are there to show you how to unwrap the tools, how to show up differently, so that we can start to break down some of these problems. But it starts with remembering we've got these on. It starts with realizing that this is complex and that the law and process is a shockingly low bar to fall to. A shockingly low bar. We can do so much better. And frankly, none of us want to work in these organizations with toxic behavior and bullying and general ethical fading. And so it is, like it or not, it's incumbent on us to do what we can with what we have to create the change. And so I want to thank you for playing today. I want to, if you're willing to open up to some conversation, some questions if we want to. And Marie, I saw you nodding a few times. What came to you as I was speaking?
Danielle, your talk has genuinely blown my mind. Like, as you were talking, I was almost like, we have the data on that. We have the data on that. This is exactly why we set up Speak Out Revolution. I think it's what you talked about was this problem is dealt with so operationally, and people don't want it to be true. I think that's the natural good in people. Like, they want these things to be misunderstandings. And, you know, the reality is, everybody's got a problem. All organizations have got a problem because we've got societal problems. And I think the challenge is organizations can't see it. Like, our data suggests only 30% of people will formally report. There's so many bits of like the journey that you talked about where I was like, yes, only 5% of people see a full resolution when they do formally report. And what is that resolution? It's that they leave the company. It's that the harasser leaves the company, or it's that they're moved teams. So we're not actually solving anything. We're just passing the trash, as they refer to it in academia. So, I mean, there was just, honestly, blew my mind. And there was, I want to talk all day, but I don't want to take over. This is your, you know, this is your talk. I would say though that that Speak Out Revolution, like where we really want to be and where we want to help companies, is to be that independent, impartial connection between employees that are fearful of speaking out justifiably, and we see it in the data, it's warranted, and organizations that want to create inclusive workplaces to help them understand this is what your current state looks like, and we're helping you understand it in a way that doesn't hold at risk your employees. Because, I mean, there's so many things that you talked about. I'm going to stop. So if anybody wants any help there, drop me an email. Happy to help. But I'd love to open the floor to questions. I know that I've got 1,000. I'll go last. So please, if you have a question, raise your hand, drop a question in the chat. I'll scroll through if we've had any previous questions as well.
Jordan, you put your camera on. I'm seeing some great comments from you. And of course, you've seen it from the other side, right? Share some of your insights. You're on mute. Hang on. How do we get you off? Ooh. Can we get Jordan off mute, Marie? Ooh. Disappeared entirely. Maybe it's coming back in.
Okay.
Maybe you have to accept it right at the beginning, or it doesn't work. I don't know. I'm not a Google Meet person.
I'm wondering, is there any questions from anyone on the call? You can drop in the chat, or you can attempt to unmute yourself.
Oh, I have one question. So let me introduce myself. I'm Dunja. I'm from Croatia, and I did the research on sexual harassment in Croatia at workplace. What I was interested in is how companies that have to have the system, are they having it? And I was interested if they are doing education, some trainings, which are not mandatory. So it shows that like more than a quarter of my respondents said that they don't know if their company has a system, and another quarter said no. So some 40% said that there is a system in place. Anyway, so are they, what I would like to know, are they education, so some trainings mandatory in UK for on sexual harassment?
Not that I'm aware of, no. I think they are a choice. Yeah,
Okay.
I think you'll find lots of. Well, my experience would be actually, Dunja, that people tend to do these things after the horse has bolted. So almost we've had a problem. Now let's train everybody so we don't have it again.
Yeah. But even what I saw on some cases that were publicly known because they ended up in the newspaper in Croatia, they even didn't do that. So it was like, and I completely agree that the how cases are managed is horrible. It's like, okay, let's put it under the rug so we don't have to deal with them. And
well, it's kind of, I mean, I don't know the score in Croatia, but certainly because there's a lot of data coming out in the UK at the moment, and I can't speak to Marie's experience, but around women successfully prosecuting for sexual abuse with the police, and the data is just dropping and dropping year on year. So we can see the system is a complete failure.
Yeah.
And maybe if I could just jump in with, you know, I'm not a HR professional. I'm, consulting, an external consultant. When I look at our data and our insights, like the key takeaway message for me is the systems and processes that we have in place in the UK, and it seems globally, do not solve this problem that is workplace harassment and bullying. It silences it. And actually, if I was to talk to someone that was at the start of their harassment and bullying journey, my advice to them would be, everything that is before you now, like every decision that you make, is there to present barriers to a resolution. And even if you could get over them all, the price and the cost to your, your mental health, your physical health, your family life is so high. Even if you get to the end of it, the best outcome you could probably hope to achieve based on what we see is a non-disclosure agreement for a trivial amount of money, in which it's going to put you at detriment getting a new job because you can't say why you've left anyway. And the person that harassed you still at that organization, they're still going to do it to the next person. Everything in place silences, it doesn't solve the problem, which is what we want to help shed a light on and solve, hopefully, one day.
I agree.
Great to hear another country's perspective too. Thank you. Jordan, you're back.
I am back, and I managed to sort out my technical issues. Apologies. What do you want me to expand on in relation to my comments?
Well, I just saw loads of comments coming through for you, and I just, you clearly feel really passionately about this. What made you come on the call today?
So I've seen this, obviously, the organisation Disrupting HR previously in relation to obviously other webinars and stuff, but never managed to kind of get on due to work pressures and stuff. Obviously, I'm on a day off, hence I'm not in my IKEA uniform. I'm not in bright yellow. So yeah, I mean, I used to work in retail. Previously to that, I worked in hospitality, two very tough industries. Seen a lot of people go through harassment, grievance, being dismissed for the company in relation to what you were saying. Oh, this is a problem. This is how we're going to deal with it. And, basically the company becomes before the person, as I put it earlier on. That kind of then stretched my kind of, I guess, education towards kind of like becoming a union rep, which was for Usdaw, while I worked for Tesco's as a night manager. Then I became a express manager while I was doing the last year of my business degree back in 2017-18. And I experienced basically firsthand them dealing with me in a inappropriate way, because they had a partnership with Usdaw, and the long and short of that was I was off doing union business. I came back, the temporary manager who was in my place then pulled me in on my very first day back and said, "You're going straight to investigation," because seemingly I'd done something on the 3 months that I was out of the business. And it was something and nothing. And the complaint was that I had basically used the gesture of this to a security guard, i.e. using like a symbol of a gun. And they kind of like went down this route of, behavioural and all this sort of stuff. It was just a total farce. I then found out afterwards, after I resigned, because I knew I wasn't going to get anywhere, that there was already a plan in place for the temporary manager to take my job. And they wanted rid of me because they felt that I had too much power over my employees. And I held my store and my standards to a much higher level. And the area manager came to me shortly afterwards, after I resigned, because he didn't know I'd resigned. It was about 2 or 3 days. And he went, "Why did you resign?" And I went, "Because I won't be scapegoated. You've basically scapegoated me. I understand that you're not part of the process, but that's what HR have done." From that, I've gone on to do my HR Masters. So I totally get where you're coming from in relation to HR. I've got obviously my CIPD level 7 and stuff like that. I'm doing a doctorate in relation to sexual harassment in the workplace, specifically in relation to LGBT people, which I identify as, which is very, very interesting because I'm about a year into that. And I do believe that HR just need to get away from this, right, this is a process, this is what we do, from the legal framework, the policies that protect the business, and actually just firstly put the person and the issue forefront, be present, as you said earlier on, because 9 times out of 10, if people are just given the space to vent, whatever way you want to put that, you'll actually find the root cause is a lot simpler to just pinpoint and go, right, okay, this is what we're going to do. Everybody in agreement, this is our next steps. And you learn so much from that. And I'm not HR currently within IKEA because I've just accepted a new job. Well, I say just accepted a new job. I accepted a new job last year, but it's been postponed due to COVID. And I took the job at IKEA in the meantime. So we don't have a HR manager, but because of my qualifications, I'm kind of stepping into that. I'm actually the customer relationship manager. So I deal with pretty much the kind of like front end customer side of it. And then all the employees come to me as a previous union rep / temporary HR person, because we only have 2 HR assistants in the company at the minute at Manchester branch, which is where I am. So it's fun times for sure. But I mean, a lot of what you were saying, I just think this kind of like process, this is what HR do. No, and I didn't get into HR from that point of view. I remember one of my lecturers actually at Salford University, she said to me, "Why are you going into HR?" And I told her, and she went, "You're going in for the wrong reasons then, because that's not what HR do." What she was saying was exactly what you were saying. This is what HR does. And I'm like, well, I'm not going into HR to do that, because my background is this. I've experienced it from a personal point of view. And I've also been a union rep, and union reps are there to kind of like do the middle ground, but stop things escalating, in my opinion, as well. And And I'm very much in that mindset that, you know, we should be treating our humans, our resources, whatever way you want to put it, people and culture, as people. And what we've got to remember is people are dealing with so much outside of work, and not everybody leaves the stuff at the door as much as we want them to. And it could just be something so simplistic that they need 5 minutes to talk to somebody on a level playing ground, without this kind of superiority, right? Let's have a kind of like formal meeting kind of thing. Because as soon as you say that, the mindset changes of somebody straight away, as we all know, you know, and it has to be very organic. Look, I'm here if you want to talk to me.
Yeah.
No written down stuff. I may take a few notes just to kind of like summarize what you've said to me, and then we can come up with a plan to help you, or whatever the case may be. But I've spoken too much now.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing. And you know, actually, as you were speaking, I don't know why it came to me, but, and it was connected with what you were saying and with what Danielle was saying. I was speaking to a tribunal judge recently, and he said to me about a harassment case, and he said to me, let me tell you, I know what will have happened. He said, almost every case doesn't go any further because nobody could find any evidence. And as if people harass people in front of other people regularly anyway, right? So he said, you know, so the standard we get to at the end of any reporting process is, well, there is no evidence, so we can't take it any further. And I love what you've just said there, Jordan, about you've got to see the human in the room, because actually, if you're on the receiving end of that, what you hear is, we don't believe you.
Yeah.
And we're not going to do anything about it. And actually, the process is useless for you in that circumstance, because if you're looking for hard evidence all the time, you aren't going to find it. You know, no one takes a recording, or most people don't take a recorder into conversations. So it's so much more nuanced than I think the process allows it to be. So I love what you're saying about just put the pen and paper down and be in a conversation.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, that's kind of how I deal with things anyway. I did that as a union rep. Okay, yeah, I made a few scribbles. I took people out of the room, gave them a bit of advice in relation to the capacity that I was there in. But ultimately, I'm there as a guiding force for them in that capacity. But now it's more kind of like, you know, okay, I know what I should do from a company point of view. However, you know, I think IKEA, from my point of view here, were very much still even although it's a family business originally, and obviously it's global and all the rest of it, it still has that family feel. When you're brought in, you're buddied up, you have a mentor, you know, your whole team becomes part of your family. Everybody lives and breathes the values of 100%. And if you don't, you're challenged on it, and nobody is frightened to just go, you know, and have a word with you there and then on the shop floor or whatever. And I think if we had a little bit more of that cultural wise within any organization, well, the improvements would speak for themselves, to be honest. And obviously the data that, you know, you're kind of like sharing and what have you, which obviously you know, I've got my own data, which is very similar. I think we could really make a shift in HR, because we're just too focused on, you know, business is about profit. We need to protect the company. We need to protect our shareholders and all this business. And no, it's not. No. Who are the people at the core of the organizations? The people that we recruit and hire. We need to do more in relation to educating people, learning and developing them, and saying, look, you know, you were wrong in that sense. However, you know, we'll work with you and, you know, next steps or whatever the case may be. And none of this kind of like closed door attitude, right, we're going to, you know, this preconceived mindset of, right, you're going to put a grievance in. As you said, it's, well, that's just a case of time, you know, 2-3 weeks down the line in relation to whatever the company policy says, and they'll be gone. The headache's gone.
I love what you're saying there, because I had a conversation with somebody recently, and I do think we can empower people with this one, Marie, which I do think makes a difference. Someone obviously had reached the end of a process and had basically been told case closed. And I remember just saying to her really gently, and I said, you don't have to do this like a warrior. I said, case is closed when you decide it's closed. And she's kind of said, well, what do you mean, because they're not going to do any more. And I said, you have more avenues open to you if you want them. Let's write to the chief exec. Who do we want to talk to? This is not over until you decide it's over. And I think we've got so conforming as human beings that it's like, oh, process finished. I've exhausted all my avenues. And that's just made up. That's just made up systems, right? It's not over if we don't want it to be over. And so I think even empowering people with that sense of, like you said, Marie, like, don't kill yourself, don't lose your legs in the process or your health, but this is over when you decide it's over, not when a piece of paper does.
Absolutely. And I wanted to jump in because I see we've got about 3 minutes left. I had a question myself that I was interested to explore. So during your talk, Danielle, and I think you touched on it as well, Jordan, you talked about how responding to these incidences or these reports or complaints, there's this underlying presence of we have to protect the company. And I really wanted to ask some more about that logic, because really from what we see, from the insights that we have at Speak Out Revolution, for example, I see that if people weren't very clever, they might think they were protecting the company by getting rid of the person that's making the complaint. But when I look at our insights, I see things like when somebody complains about someone that is harassing them, typically there's at least 5 other people that have been impacted by that person. When you look at the actual outcomes that person experiences in terms of, detriment to their mental health, time that they have to take off of work, time that is spent on grievance processes that we can demonstrably show do not work for the company or for the individual. Like, there's a lot of time and money going into delivering something that fundamentally I don't think works. So I'm kind of interested to understand the protect the company. I think
personally, I don't think we always know we're doing it. I would say that I think it's much more nuanced than that. I think it's almost so ingrained in you. It's a bit like, beauty standards for women, for example. They're all around you. You can't miss them, but you're not absorbing them in a conscious way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
They're really so I don't know that you're always in this protect the company, but I think it's where your mind goes to in a more subtle way than that. But the other thing I want to say, and this isn't the answer to all of it, but I do think it's there are power bases in organizations. We know that, right? And so there are certain people who we allow a degree of ethical fading around. And by that, what I mean is, we know that person's a bit odd or a bit quirky, but look at the results they deliver. Or actually, we're all shit scared of them. So none of us want to take on that one because it's going to be a massive storm and a mess, right? And so I do think we sit in a room and go, well, obviously we're not going to deal with that problem because X has already told us we're not going to, and therefore we better just clean up the mess over here. I think that's going on regularly.
I would back that up through extensive qualitative descriptions from people that share their experience with us as well. There's a massive conflict of interest, I think, within the processes and systems themselves.
And I should say thank you to Karen, by the way, who's sharing some brilliant models in the. I have to go and look up restorative justice now because I don't know what that is, and I do want to. I think it's going to help you. Thank you, Karen.
It's really worth reading up on.
I'm writing it down.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing. Okay, so we're at 1 o'clock. I could talk about this all day. Amazing talk, Danielle. I'll just say thank you so much from us at Speak Out Revolution for sharing your time. And I'll say thank you, everyone, for taking time out of your day to talk about this. I hope that you'll join us for our next Speak Out talk. Please share it with your connections. We're going to be hearing from Professor Jessica Doyle on effectively and efficiently making positive changes with your voice. And please do follow us on social media. We're sharing our insights and findings and resources and events. And we're active on all of the social media, unless there's new ones that are coming out that I'm just too old to understand are effective. So I would say thank you again, Danielle, and thank you everyone for joining the conversation.
Great to be with you.
Yes, wonderful. And I'm sure I will convince you to come and do some more work with us.
See you soon.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thanks for joining us, everyone.